Welcome back to the channel, chess friends. Today, for our repertoire format, where I try to suggest interesting variations, we'll look at 1 for white and 2 for black, as always. 1 against e4 and 1 against d4. Specifically, I've chosen 3 today with the idea of low theory but good results. So, I'll start by saying that what we'll see are main variations, meaning they are considered played by top players. So we aren't looking at minor lines. They are main lines, so obviously there is theory, but let's say among the main ones, we're choosing those with the least amount of theory. That said, enough chit-chat, let's open the chessboard and start thinking about what to do with white. In my opinion, among all the main openings, the one that has a lower level of theory is the English opening. Lower theory obviously doesn't mean it's less effective, because the English opening is a perfectly respectable opening, just like d4 and e4. However, there is obviously a big difference, because both with d4 and e4, the presence of various lines is quite demanding. On e4, we have to be prepared for many things: the French, the Scandinavian, the Caro-Kann, the Sicilian, in short, the Pirc, the modern, the Philidor. And so let's say there is a lot of theory. On c4, let's say there is much less theory, also because white can set up, well, a scheme. I don't want to say universal, because that would be incorrect to say, since it still needs to be adapted a bit. But he can, let's say, always place his pieces in a certain way. And this scheme is the Botvinnik system. For example, let's put down some of the English opening moves. So white develops the bishop to g2. Obviously, there's the pawn on c4, so this time we can't put it there. And usually, let's say, the Botvinnik system starts with these moves here. The knight goes here, you see it develops and obviously controls the center. Black usually fianchettos. So the Botvinnik system, let's say, involves the pawn going to e4, and the other one goes to d3, and the knight comes to e2. So here maybe we can start with the move d3, bishop g7, and here, let's say, e4. Let's just set up the position directly, right? Knight here, short castle. There, this is generally one of the positions we reach in a symmetrical English. But usually, let's say, white manages to set up this Botvinnik system against many of black's attempts. So here it's very interesting, because the position is certainly balanced. It's open to all results, with white having several interesting plans. For example, one Botvinnik plan is to play for f4, which with this piece configuration obviously gains decent strength, because unlike perhaps a traditional English, here we have, let's say, the possibility of also playing for f4. Or another very interesting plan in this position, in true English style, is obviously to play with rook b1, a 3, b4. So white, let's say, tries to take this space on the queen side, tries to open up a path on the queen side. Obviously, the fight for the d5 square, there are many interesting themes. This is, let's say, the symmetrical setup. Let's also look at something different. Let's say that the English often pairs with the Reti, because obviously black against the English can play these systems and then transpose with the move d5. So, from this point of view, in addition to those English setups, we somehow need to evaluate these Reti setups. For example, this one here is one of the main variations with white taking space, and this more or less becomes a Benoni structure as well. But let's say these are positions where you study these structures a little bit, and white's positions are very good. And let me tell you, I know many very strong players. I'll take this opportunity to say hello to one of them, my friend Andrea Amato from Palermo, a FIDE Master. Well, Andrea has been a c4 player throughout his entire career, and I tell you, I've played against him so many times, being from Palermo, in many tournaments, and I tell you that despite the fact that I and other guys might have been prepared against Andrea, who obviously played the English, I tell you that his understanding of these structures was stronger than our theoretical knowledge. So if you learn to play these English and Reti schemes well, even if you don't review the theory that much, or perhaps your opponent is well prepared theoretically, I tell you that you will withstand the impact, because in these positions, strategic understanding definitely reigns supreme. So, in my opinion, for the strategic positional player, it's an excellent suggestion. There isn't a huge amount of theory, there is a lot of experience to be gained. This is without a doubt, because these types of positions need to be digested, and you need to understand how white must adapt from time to time. However, once you do this work, I must tell you that you have in your hands a very interesting repertoire that you don't need to change every 10 minutes because, again, I used Andrea as an example earlier. Even when you face prepared opponents, if you are good at the strategy of these structures and positions, you can really, really go far. So definitely in the episode about openings with little theory but good results, in my opinion, I definitely recommend you delve into this English reti scheme. Let's move on to black. Let's move on to black because we obviously start from e4 and against e4 today. Let's say I will try to suggest something main, and something main against e4 only means 4 variations nowadays, which are the Italian, the Sicilian, the Caro-Can, and the French. So among all of these, in my opinion, the variation that has the least theory and in my opinion has a better yield is the French, but with an asterisk. What is the asterisk? The asterisk is that against the main French with d4, d5, knight c3, so the classical variation of the French, here you have to play the Rubinstein system, d takes e4 and knight takes e4. Obviously, what is the advantage? That you can play this system both here against the classical variation, but also and above all against the Tarrasch variation with knight d2. As you can see, you practically reach the same position. And why did I make this note? Because, for example, in the classical variation, there are 2 alternatives here that black can play instead of the Rubinstein, obviously, which are the Winauer variation with bishop b4 and the Steinitz variation with knight f6. There is this famous position right after e5. Well, these 2 variations present a very significant amount of theory, so I wouldn't dare say that the French has less theory than the others if, for example, you play a Winauer. But if you are comfortable playing this Rubinstein here, which I will briefly illustrate shortly, the French, in my opinion, among the main variations, is the one that has the least theory and the best yield. In particular, let's try to quickly understand this position, then maybe I'll even make a dedicated video if you're interested. Actually, write it in the comments. And in this position, you see white has a bit more space and has a knight in the center. So from this point of view, we can say it has a small dynamic advantage. So what should black do? It must recover this dynamic disadvantage. To do this par excellence, let's say, we must try to lighten the position a bit, perhaps by trading off some pieces. Be careful though, if you try to trade the piece like this, after knight takes, the queen on f6 finds itself a bit embarrassed and can easily end up under attack. So the idea of knight f6 is fine, but it must be executed in this way. Knight bd7 and then knight f6, okay? This is the Rubinstein position. Obviously, I don't need to tell you, the main break move is c5. And having said that, then in the French, besides the Rubinstein, you have to study the structure of the advanced variation, and honestly, then just a few minor lines. The exchange variation, yes, for heaven's sake, there is some poison in the exchange variation too, but theoretically speaking, it's not that big of a challenge, eh? Even without knowing theory here, black can honestly play. And in my opinion, you also need to delve a bit into the king's Indian attack. This is because, let's say, I'm telling you this as a French player who played it for a lifetime. As a kid, the king's Indian attack is very annoying. It's not like it's anything special, anything crazy if black plays correctly against the well-prepared variation, but still, this one needs to be studied a little bit. Otherwise, you lose against the king's Indian attack. So let's say, in the end, 3 macro variations and that's it. Well, if you think about it right, a Sicilian where white can do anything, same for e4, e5. Obviously, with the French, you save a lot and a lot of theory. And after that, we'll look at d4. And here I will recommend one of my favorite openings. And watch out, you'll see it in Wednesday's video. So let's say you'll see some more explanation. And by the way, always write to me in the comments if you are interested in other openings. Write them down. I'll take notes then if I can. Obviously, I'll show them to you. And remember, if you want to support the channel, subscribe, like, and leave a comment to support this channel. Because on Wednesday, let's say the video on the Benko Gambit will arrive for you. The Benko Gambit, don't let yourself be intimidated by the evaluations the computer gives, because the computer, let's say, with this gambit gives a nice plus 0.70 to +1 for white, okay? So one might think, but is it a wrong gambit that relies on tricks? Nothing could be further from the truth. The Benko Gambit is very strategic, and I can assure you, you will see it in Wednesday's video, that in many positions where the computer gives +1, 0.80, these are positions that, from a practical point of view, are very complicated for white to handle, and black, let's say, has a lot of fun. Just to set up the base position of the benko is this one here, where white destroys their castling and then rebuilds it in this manner. Let's just place the pieces for a moment. So where is the compensation in the benko? The compensation in the benko is that obviously they will then bring the pieces, especially the heavy pieces, onto these two open files. And I can assure you that the pressure on these two files will offer great compensation for the pawn, let's say, so kindly gifted. And the variation is very, very interesting, I can assure you. For many years when I played d4 as white, I would come out of the opening well against the benko gambit every time because I was prepared and therefore knew what I had to do. But I can assure you that at a certain point in those positions, which are theoretically advantageous, black would eventually manage to get out of it, because strategically, black's position is very interesting. White has to be very, very on point so as not to lose the game. So, in my opinion, there is some theory to know for this variation, obviously, but I think it represents an excellent repertoire recommendation, and above all, very fun games come out of it, so I absolutely recommend it to you 100%. Well, today we gave these 3 suggestions. As you can see, they are somewhat different types. And these are 3 main suggestions. So these 3 that I gave you are 3 main openings. They are not openings to just play quickly for a repertoire and then see what happens. They are 3 variations for a player who wants to build a good repertoire that requires study, without a doubt. But okay, less study perhaps compared to many other main variations where you can go crazy studying them. So I hope you enjoyed these suggestions, and I look forward to seeing you in the next videos. Remember, Wednesday is the video on the benko gambit. See you next time.